Alright, so today's date, we are 17th March, Tuesday. Alright, I only got one trade today on NAS100. Let me see if I point it out here. Only one trade, which was basically a one-to-one. So yeah, you can see one-to-one trade, nothing too fancy, just it was just no volume, but the expectation was there. However, for today's video, we're going to be talking about what I'm currently seeing on the on both indices pairs. Well, I don't think gold is correlating the same, but yeah, but we're not going to talk about gold now. So US30, well, I see some format here on a small little congestion happening here on the 4-hour. Okay, now if we take a look, we point out price at this point, which was last month, 10th Feb. Okay, and of course from there, this was technically the highest price point. Obviously after price had reached that level, you'd see what price this was. This was a 50,600. All right, and then from there price just plummeted right all the way down to, let's see, what is this, 46347. Right, however, this is nothing too crazy, right? This is just building perspective, right? I do not like to predict price, but I like to kind of see what are the what's the consistencies across this market, okay, in terms of price points, in terms of timing. Of course, you know, last month Feb, and we are now in March. Okay, so of course, if we look at indices from a long-term perspective, it has a bullish expectancy, right, for the longest time. Okay, so I'm going to show me all price action now. So eventually the market will have to switch and start pushing to the upside, right? And of course, as things start dumbing down regarding the wars and everything happening in the world, maybe some money will start shifting back into the stock market, right? I do have some form of expectancy that the JPY pairs might have done very well in this time being. Let's see. JPY futures. Okay, now maybe not a good example. Let's look at USD JPY. I mean, looks fairly good. From Feb up to now, had a huge push. Okay, but yeah. Anyway, normally what happens when the stock market falls, the the JPY pairs do well, and the and gold, precious metals do well as well. But we don't have to talk about that now. Let's just talk about this technical concepts here that I'm seeing on US30 and NAS100. Okay, so we can use basic tools here. We can see, and if we draw a ray from this point to this point, we can see consistent touch points right over here. Let me just delete this. So we can click here, 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 and here. Okay, and then of course from there, no more resistance, prices plummeted. What I like to do is I like to take another ray and then move it like this, and as we can see, more consistency points from here, here, and then here. Okay, and does this mean that I must take a sell here? I mean, if you did, you probably would have done well today, but no. What I'm seeing here is that we are pushing, and the expectancy would be is that if price pushes past this trend line, retest, price will probably begin that soar to the upside. Okay, but this is not a prediction game. Okay, and also these trend lines can be a form of guidance. However, if we look left, there's a lot of bolt up happening here, okay, which can enable price to then continue to the upside rather than waiting for price to interact with this trend line. So what I saw was, okay, we can see that price, based on the candlesticks, we had a pretty good basic downtrend here if we interact with all the candles, and then finally we start seeing this bullish shift. Okay, not only do we see a small little bullish shift happening within this area, we do also see that price had already began taking liquidity. So let me show you an example here. So liquidity for me would be basically, if we're looking at an uptrend, okay, where would my liquidity be resting? My liquidity will always be resting beneath the higher lows. Okay, so once the market, let's say for instance pushes down, grabs a low, and then pushes up after that, that is a good indication that the market is looking to soar to higher prices. Okay, and then of course, even though this was a point of soaring, this is still a format of liquidity for me. So price can easily come push down again and then look for higher prices. Okay, so this is exactly what I'm seeing here on US30. So if we just sort of follow what I'm about to do here, we can see that this lower high had been broken by this burst through candle. Okay, here we have the indication of the break. Okay, and then the market created a higher low right there. So that's a form of liquidity. We can even use this as a form of liquidity, okay, because it is a low, which is basically the starting point of the soar upwards. Okay, then the market had pushed up, pushed down, created another higher low right there. Market immediately pushed down, grabbed the higher low. Okay, obviously the traders that had started buying at this point, of course, got stopped out. Price continued to a higher projection. Okay, and obviously we can see that this price point here is basically the highest point out of this market type right here. So what do we expect? I expect that they will eventually come fetch this high and then reach for new highs. Okay, but before that can happen, again, here is a higher low. We have liquidity, of course, resting beneath the low. Would I wait for price to push down, grab this liquidity before going up? Yes, but the market can easily just generate liquidity from this point, grab the liquidity, then go for higher prices. So this is basically the criteria for me before looking to get involved, right? So for instance, once price grabbed this low here, how would we get involved in something like this for price projection that price is going to seek higher prices? Of course, we can aim for this high. Let's say for instance we took a buy somewhere here, and then we would just hold the price up to this target level. Okay, that could be a scenario, but I do use a very strict entry criteria. But if we just look at this market after this liquidity, we can expect there to be bullish demand. Okay, so once liquidity is grabbed, I always like to combine a institutional concept like a SMC concept, like a fair value gap, a order block, okay, or I don't know, like a change of character. Right here we can already see a change of character on the 1 hour. Market pushed past that low, and then that same high that pushed past the low got broken right there. I don't know how people would normally trade something like this, but maybe a retest, entry right here, stops here, and then of course aim for this high, or if you have a suitable risk reward like maybe a 1 to 2, which seems very realistic, and that's a trade right there. If you do not enter on the 1 hour, which I do not, I do enter on the 5, However, a 5 can be a little bit complex, right? But let's see here what we can see. So let's see what time this real push was here. This is on Tuesday, very early in the morning, and of course, here you can clearly see as the market opened, the market was already at a very high price point. So of course, I can understand that there needed to be some form of retracement. Maybe tomorrow we'll see some price action for tomorrow's York session, for price to then do something like this. Of course, now it's too early, market is about to close, so obviously this is not the best time to be taking or looking for trades, right? But I'm just building perspective here. But yeah, many formats here. Let me see on the 15. Here we have a break, liquidity, maybe something like this. Good entry right here, stops beneath the low, and this would obviously yield a much higher RR. Okay, but I'm not going to go into the whole entry format. I'm just showing you perspective based on what is happening here. So currently, in this current market condition, where are our main points? Okay, our main points is this high price here and this low right here, because this low had created this high. Okay, so price is now just dangling in between these two lines. So what would I expect? Again, there is obviously a possibility for price to push down and maybe just continue that underlying huge bearish momentum, or right, which is what I expect, because price has already been falling for the longest time. Maybe it's time now for a structure shift. Then price can maybe dangle a little bit and then begin soaring up and then create higher prices. Okay, so of course these two areas, this line and everything that's happening in between here is going to be very, very important, very crucial for this upcoming weeks for US30 and NAS100. Look, price action is basically the same. If we look at NAS, of course NAS was also falling for since Jan, actually right here. Price is now here. When do we expect price to start shifting? Well, if we look here on the 4, we do have this high that got broken. Okay, another one. So we do have bullish momentum already, but no liquidity has been grabbed off of these lows that is currently resting right here. So once these lows get grabbed, we can expect bullish repulsion to the upside. But again, there's a lot of speed bumps. Like here, these highs over here, these highs over here. Of course, it's not going to be a smooth way up, but we can expect prices to start bolding in that bullish format, and then we take it from there. That is basically what I'm seeing right now on these indices pairs. So especially from someone like me, I've been trading this since Jan, taking it all the way down. I just aim for 1 to 2s. Of course, don't expect me to hold a trade from here all the way down. That's unrealistic, but yeah, and that's about it for today's video.